Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Stelter. I'm the president here at the Stelter Company. Thanks for joining us today for a great talk with two terrific individuals around the elusive, ever-changing, and shape-shifting plan-giving donor, presented by Katherine Swank and Lawrence Henze from Blackbaud Target Analytics. I'll get back to their intro in just a quick minute, but want to say a little bit about the webinar series. As many of you know, as an industry leader, Stelter is committed to providing innovative solutions and education for industry. And we're always happy to host these complimentary webinars with some of the industry's brightest minds and speakers. And today's webinar is actually our fifth in our 2021 series. We've already heard from Russell James, Catherine Myrie, Brantley Boyette, and others. Later this year, you'll hear from presenters like Jen Shang at the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, and she'll teach us how to love our donors. Adrian Sargent, also from the Institute, will share advice from his 25 years of research on how to build donor loyalty. And Margaret Holman will give us tips on how to use planned gifts to solve donor problems. You can always access any of the past archives of our webinars, or even sign up for the future ones on our website at stelter.com/webinars. Now back to our terrific presenters today. They've given me short bios, partially because I really want to get into the meat of the content. So I'll just give a quick introduction, but I'm really excited to have both of them today. Lawrence Henze is an analytics architect and senior principal consultant at Blackbaud Target Analytics. He's been there for 20 years and has actually worked in the nonprofit sector for over 39 years now. Katherine Swank is a principal strategic consultant, also with Blackbaud Target Analytics, and has been there for 14 years. Previously, I believe, was at National Director of Plan Giving at National MS and a couple other shops, but has over 25 years of experience in the fundraising industry. And we're very excited to have both of them with us today. So without further ado, I will hand it off to them.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. Katherine is driving today because I'm also known as technical difficulty. So that's why we had an issue getting started on time. So let's talk about a problem that we might have, which is actually a blessing. We have so many plan giving prospects. And one of the problems with that is that we just don't know what to do with them. And for many institutions, that causes us just to freeze and not do anything. So we're going to be talking today about how we should be collecting data on plan giving prospects. And that would include things like, when you have the data, can you create models on who's most likely to give? And then we're going to discuss, Katherine's going to walk us through the donor models we've created over a 20-year period of time. And we're also going to talk about implementation strategies using this type of information. It's new to some of you are already doing it, and many of you are wondering what you should be doing with it because you already have the information, but maybe not the plan to implement it. And we'll be talking all about that today. And you also get a link to a paper that Katherine and I just published earlier this week. So a question we want to ask. Oh, we're not going to ask that question. Okay. Okay.
I think we are.
Do you want to ask this question, Katherine? Go ahead.
Sure. We wanted to find out, there's so many of you on the webinar today, many names we recognize and others we're delighted to be meeting today. We want to know if you've already created a planned gift donor model or models. And we have a couple of answers for you here, and we hope you'll take just a second to let us know. So you might have an internal model, something that your own analytics team or business systems people have created, or maybe you've created. You might be using a third-party vendor to create a model for you. Maybe you don't know. Sometimes other people are leading a project and they may have some donor models and you weren't informed. That would be horrible. Or you may have some, but that you're not using them. We'd like to know where you are on that.
And Katherine, we have about 60% of people who have answered, and I still see people answering. So we'll leave it open for a couple more seconds and let those last people go ahead and answer. Again, this is anonymous, so don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
And there's no right answer.
No.
Okay, it looks like it's slowed down. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you.
All right, so it looks like we're pretty close on, we have an internal model, excellent. Or I'm not sure if we use donor models. I think the second answer there, I'm not sure if we use donor models, is not uncommon. In Lawrence's and I business, we often work with the database manager, there, I'm getting the words wrong, with the prospect research team or with the business analyst. And often they've created things in the back end and it might be their project and they're not sharing. So you may want to ask if you've ever created them and if you have access to them. So we can go ahead and close that. It's good to see people, over 50% said that you have used something. So that's good to know. We won't go too deeply into what how that data is being used, but we do want to help you see how to use this data for plan giving. All right, I think I'm supposed to do two things here. All right, Lawrence.
Okay, all right. So everybody's heard the term big data nowadays, and big data is constituted for purposes of modeling for nonprofits of data that's collected by the nonprofit itself, as well as what might be called third-party data or appended data. And that can include things such as consumer data, wealth data, and then the giving data in terms of how they give to you, as well as philanthropic data in general to other organizations. There's so much more data available than there was when we started doing this work 20 years ago, that the models have continued to be refined over the period of time. Data science is the overall practice used generally by statisticians or business analysts to take the data, build statistical models, purpose of which is to predict behavior in the future. That insight then is delivered to you so that you can use it, hopefully, and this is really important to consider, to revise or change your the way you're doing things. In many cases, if it suggests that you have a lot more prospects than you thought you had, then we have to revise our approach so that we can get to those prospects. We all know, and I'll say this very quickly, that people can make bequests without ever telling you that they're going to make a bequest. We certainly want to get in front of those people so they know that your particular institution is interested in that. And then when you apply this and start getting more hand raisers, and the hand raisers turn into actual live prospects, and you can interact with them, that's where the true value comes from this. All right, so common questions that pop up over time, and I'm sorry, everything is frozen on my laptop right now, but hang on one second, there we go. What do we use for data, particularly from a nonprofit? We want your giving history. And at a minimum, 6 years of giving history. But we also like longitudinal data, for instance, how many years have they given? How many gifts have they made? Those can all be strong correlations with planned giving in particular. That was one of the first things that jumped out when we first started doing this work, that giving, and in many cases at lower levels, but very loyal behavior, had a very strong correlation with planned giving. Those type of people tend to make the smaller gifts, such as bequests and annuities, or in smaller gifts in the form of bequests and annuities. Now we're able to look at things like philanthropic patterns to all organizations, and that can give us insights into what types of organizations people give to and perhaps make planned gifts. So there's all sorts of data available to us now that we didn't have before. Next slide, Katherine. All right, a very quick timeline here of our model progression. In the early 2000s, our models had a very strong variable in it, which was age. And one of the reasons age was in there was that organizations tended to record the age of a person's passing as the date of the gift for bequests. So it skewed the age to much older than how old the person was at the time they actually made their bequest intention. As we progressed through the 2000s, that type of data started to become better as delivered by nonprofits across the country. And so as you started to record information as to when the person originally put you into their estate plans or the date of the annuity, that type of information went into model building, and lo and behold, we found that people were making these decisions at a much younger age. And that certainly changed the way we viewed not only models, but the type of work that the Stelter company does in terms of marketing. How do you get marketing information out at the right time? Next slide.
All right, I think that's off to me.
It is.
Okay, so we've gone through at least 4 different iterations of what the planned gift donor looks like in the United States and several different iterations of what the planned gift donor looks like in Canada. I was a customer of Target Analytics, used the donor profile in my work, and found that it really helped me to understand better what a bequest donor was what they looked like, how to market to them, how to use that information to show the right picture or the right donor story. And I think that's one of the real benefits that you get from a donor model. When I first started doing planned giving, I think I did what most people did. We had a budget and I said, I can send so many things out. And so I figured out how to cut off my list at that number of people. And I used all kinds of data information that really had no reason to be used other than it was being used by the person who was there before me, or it was being used to cut off a list, like a certain age, a certain number of gifts, the gifts were at a certain level, those sorts of things. But there was no real value in that data because it wasn't really what was behind who the bequest donors or the CRT donors or the gift annuitants really were. And so I became interested in donor models 15, 16 years ago as a customer when I was using them. I'm delighted to have been part of the new iterations of things like the bequest profile over time to really see how that's changed. So we used to see things like people didn't move very much from their neighborhood. They stayed in their homes for a long period of time, and that is absolutely gone now. And we see that people are moving frequently or moving much more often. But this is today's bequest donor profile. This is what we know about people who are making gifts right now. And while our data comes from places that are different from, say, Russell James, or from the data that Stelter company is using when they do a survey or create a model or a report, it's all pointing to really the same people. They're people with very conservative financial habits who are typically in their mid ages, 45 and up-ish, into their 50s when they start to think about estate planning or create their bequest. So here's what we know out of the 1,500 pieces of information that we have available at Blackbaud, both from customers and from these external sources that Lawrence mentioned, is we know that they tend to have some consumer habits that link them together and are predictive to them making a planned gift. It might seem like an odd thing to say that people who are gardening or they're mail responsive make better bequest prospects, but in fact, how they use their money is extremely predictive. So we know that they're interested in technology or staying connected to the world. I think that's a great way of interpreting that variable. They're interested in, I think, their own bit of the world too, through things like that gardening, growing and planting something, which I think is what a bequest donor does, and that they are mail responsive, which is interesting because we see a lot of things turning over to electronic marketing. And we know that for the bequest donor, that the mail is still important. They may answer something or look something up online, but it's probably the mail that prompts them to do so. We also have available to us some health statistics about neighborhoods, and we know that they tend to be living in very healthy neighborhoods. So we have to make the assumption that they themselves are healthy people at this point as well. There is a life stage whether they're 45 or whether they're 85, they have few people living in their household. Typically 1 to 2 person households are those that make bequests in combination with these other factors. They're affluent to wealthy households. They have something to give away. And those assets are accumulating over time. They've been conservative with them in the present. We've seen in past models that they don't spend a lot on mortgage amounts, or their mortgages are gone. They don't tend to take out new checking accounts or loans and things like that. So we see this real financial conservative profile through the 4 or 5 iterations of the bequest donor. Even though they are affluent to wealthy, they are reserving their resources for that safety net. And then they're loyal to above average in their giving. They make gifts frequently and consistently to the organizations that they support, more often than not. And when they do make a gift, it's usually the above average. So if you know what your average is, that actually takes away that thought that I want to market to people who make only low-end gifts. Actually, bequest donors make a slightly higher gift. And so all of these in combination help to provide or point to the records in your database. Where do we get that data? Well, consumer gardening, mails is all coming from habits from our consumer things like Experian and Equifax and things like that. The very healthy could be coming from US census statistics or other modeled information. People living in the household is usually demographic or socio-demographic information. And then the wealth can be modeled, it can be purchased, or it can be household information from places like our consumer marketing. And then the loyalty factors, the philanthropic factors are coming from customer data. So you can see that this information comes from more than one place and is highly predictive in pointing out who are our bequest prospects.
Catherine, if I could jump in one second. So from my experience as a gift officer, I think Katherine would echo this. When you would go to talk with these people and you gain their trust, often they would share with you either glimpses or in-depth information about their financial situation. And lo and behold, they tended to be much wealthier than their surroundings would indicate.
Correct.
The house would be modest, and other indicators, the car might not be brand new, all those different things that point to fiscal conservatism. And when I look back on that, in many cases, people essentially shared their balance sheet with me. Is that I missed an opportunity in many cases to talk to them about giving currently, so that whatever they were going to put into their bequest could be happening right now so they could see it while they were still alive. Of course, you wouldn't put it quite that way, but so I just want to jump in with that.
I think that's perfect.
It's a missed opportunity, I think.
It is. And our bequest donor, I like to say, is hiding amongst their conservative fiscal characteristics. Yeah. The annuity profile donor, they are a little bit alike and a little bit different. We see that they're also technologically connected. They are spending their resources on computers as well, and they're choosing not to spend their money on international travel. And what I find so interesting about that is it's not something we made up. It's something that out of 1,500 pieces of data presented itself as being a predictive factor. So we see that their travel might be to families, see their grandchildren, do things like that, but not so much traveling far and wide any longer. They have fewer transactions, but larger purchases when they do use their credit. And so they're using their credit infrequently, but for large purchases. So this might actually be about points. It might be about using or gaining points for things like the airline ticket to go see grandchildren, or being able to purchase products through some of those point programs, things like that. Again, we're back to the 1 to 2 person households here, and we see that their age does matter. I think this comes back to the fact that our annuity programs require a minimum age, most of them, 60, 65, something at that. And we see the silent and baby boomer generation coming in here as being the most predictive of those. So what you see missing is the greatest generation here. Loyal and above average gifts, again, same type of giving patterns to you, but slightly different on what the annuity donor looks like. Our CRT donor is the most different of them all. So the CRT donor is looking at the silent and baby boomer generation, and we actually see some millennial factors coming in here as well, skipping over Gen X, which is very, very interesting. So maybe there's some higher wealth happening within the millennial group, and they may be setting up a CRT to either fund something for themselves or to perhaps take care of parents later on. This group of people tend to hold large amounts of public record assets. I'm just getting rid of something on my screen here. Large amounts of public record assets. So public record assets are those that can be found through a wealth screening. So if you're using something like donor search or Wealth Point or Wealth Engine, that's a public record asset screening. It's looking to take a name and address and match it to real estate or match it to a business, those sorts of things. We see that these CRT donors tend to have lots of public record assets. They spend on hobbies and specialty food. That's where their consumer habits that are predictive are coming in. And we also see that they come from these very healthy lifestyles or neighborhoods. So they themselves, we assume, are also healthy. And they use their credit frequently. It's very different. They tend to swipe their cards all the time. What's not predictive, and what we don't know because it didn't come into the profile, is whether they're paying off those swipes of the card, whether they're carrying large balances or not. But we do know that they use credit frequently and often. So that leads me to think about the gift annuitant or the CRT donor and the way that they make either current gifts or they want to fund something is allowing them to use their credit card to do so. And your organization's willingness to make that cost of doing business, to understand that this is important and how these people use their money. They also make larger than average gifts. So this is not just slightly larger than average. These are much larger than average gifts. So these profile a little bit closer to the major gift donor than our bequest and our annuitant donors do as well. So Lawrence, anything you want to add on to that?
No, I think what you just said, I guess, points to blended gift opportunities.
I think that's a really good point.
More so than any of the profiles.
That's a good point. It is. So I'm going to we're going to do another poll here. One thing we see when we're working with our customer base is there is often an annual strategy, and we want to find out how many of you are creating a long-term strategy for using analytics for your plan giving program, 5 years or 10 years into the future. So do you have a long-term strategic plan for using your data? We want to know, are you just starting to create one? You've got one in place? Yeah, but you don't ever pull it out and review it. I was with an organization like that one time. Or strategic plan, what's a strategic plan for plan giving and analytics?
That's when you used to pull it out of the file and say, here's our strategic plan.
What's our strategic plan?
It's just like back in the days where screening projects were delivered in big binders, and you'd ask where the data was, and they'd pull the binder down from the shelf.
Yeah.
And it looked brand new. It's like, yeah, we bought this, but we're not using it.
Okay, Katherine, it looks like most people have given their answer. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll.
Excellent. Wonderful. I am so delighted. We've got over 50% say we are creating a long-term strategic plan using analytics. And I think Lawrence and I will both encourage you to fight for a plan that looks at results 3 years into the future, 5 years into the future, 7 years, 10 years. And the annual results for planned giving are fairly inaccurate and really provide very little, back to our stream of value, very little value when we know that this is the long term, the long haul of donor relationships.
For some organizations, it's not surprising for us to go to consult with them and find out that they've restarted their plan giving program 3 or 4 times. And it's because they lost the budget because it wasn't producing immediate results. We can pretty much tell you that that's what's going to happen. It's rare that it doesn't happen that way. So you really need to have a long-term plan. And sometimes then, for instance, a major estate might close in the first year or two. And that's both good news and bad news, because then the expectation is that's going to happen every year, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
I'd add one thing to what we just asked you about, is when you're creating that strategic plan, be careful not to think of it only in terms of plan giving, but how does plan giving interact with annual giving? And how does it interact with major giving? And how might you want to steward or thank plan giving prospects? If you know, for instance, that Katherine and I might be plan giving prospects and we're making annual gifts, would you try to engage with us at a higher level, because the potential is there for a much larger gift? Those are the types of things we would like to have you think about in a much broader fashion, as opposed to these siloed fashion that often happens in many organizations.
And I'm going to piggyback on that as well. Russell James had a report that came out about 1.5 to 2 years ago, and he reported some findings that we knew internally and really hadn't shared, and that is that there is this growing divide between when people stop making their current gift and a planned gift is in place. It's somewhere between a couple years to around 5 years. And what he said, I think, was really important, was that we stopped communicating with people right when we should be communicating with them about the next thing. And so that's, I think, where that long-term strategic plan, using your analytics for both annual giving and for planned giving, can become useful. And if I'm working with you, or you're working with a consultant with other third party, reach out and have that conversation about all the analytics that you have available. All right, let me see if I can make an advance. I'm trying. There we go.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I love this picture, because this is probably what everybody has been doing in the last 15, 16 months. Animals or other people walking through your office. Couple things. First of all, whether you use a company like ours, you do modeling on your own, you work with another company, the analysis, once you get the result, has been done. Don't go down a rabbit hole of continuing to analyze and be paralyzed. You know, you've heard the term paralysis by analysis. It's a real thing. And often we can talk to our clients where a couple of people in the organization are, still trying to break apart the scores as opposed to implementing the scores. And so your job is to take the scores and make them into a relationship. Perhaps you work with the people at Stelter and they help you to build a marketing plan which warms these prospects up for you. And then you can talk to the hand raisers among that group. That's what your job is all about. You'll get more gifts that way. Yes, some gifts will be generated by direct mail alone, but you can't build your entire strategy on that. It has to have a mixed component to it. Next one, Katherine. All right, so how do we use the data? So I'm going to tell you that of the way we use the data, prospect pools. So building a portfolio for gift officer, whether it be a planned gift officer only or a major gift officer who has both planned giving and major giving prospects. Unfortunately, we would tell you that analytics is not often enough used for that purpose. And why is that? Because planned giving compared to major giving is a much more passive job description, I guess, or at least that's the way it's implemented. Direct marketing is great. You should be doing direct marketing. We're big fans of direct marketing, but you have to have a plan for talking with prospects. And I know Katherine found this in her background as a gift officer. I found it as well. then when you were in front of somebody, the closure rate was incredibly high.
So much.
Because at that point you were engaged with them and they wanted you there. And they'd given it a lot of thought as to what they wanted to do. Or what they wanted to do, I think I said it, sorry. Direct marketing, you need to get a message out to the people who are going to be most receptive to the message. And what analytics can tell you is who those people are going to be. One of the things we learned early on when we started building plan giving models is the prospect pools we created were often vastly different than the prospect pools that the institution had created. So if you overlay one against the other, it wasn't as much overlap as you might have thought. So analytics will point at what we know is a group of people that respond and make plan gifts, as opposed to be honest with you, some long-term axiom in the business that doesn't have any statistical foundation to it. There's no facts behind it.
I've already admitted I was one of those.
And I was too when I got into business. And it was actually a plan giving conference I attended that got me motivated to do analytics. That was the kickoff to my analytics career. I am not an analytics major like Katherine. We both have law degrees. We're moonlighting in the analytics business.
I want to add to this about the point on resonant messaging.
Yeah.
When you have a donor model, you have cues or clues about the donor profile to talk about. You have something that might point you to age or interests. You can make your stories about these people much more ripe and pick out those who present themselves as that average plan giving prospect that you can point to. One of the other things I used to do was, profile a donor that would say yes. And who were those people? They were usually older. They were willing to say that they had done something because they wanted the recognition or the contact. And it may not have been the view or the picture of my real average plan gift donor. So that resonant messaging is within your donor model. You can really take those clues and be much more targeted with that. All right, I think we've got one more poll, if I'm right, and I can get the slide. All right, here's the number one bugaboo I see. That's why we wanted to ask it. Do you know where the analytics are in your constituent relationship management database, or CRM, aka CRM? That could be Advance or Banner or Razor's Edge or Millennium. Do you know where your analytics are? And our answers point to, yeah, I do, and I use them all the time, or I don't look at them very often, or I'm not sure where they are, or nope, I never access the donor records. We wanted to sort of get a sense of your comfort level with the database and with your data.
And as Jen said, these answers are anonymous. This isn't
Anonymous.
two people from Blackbaud that are trying to find out if you need new software.
They are anonymous. We do still have some people answering. We're at about 65% of our attendees that have answered. So the other 40% of you guys, go ahead. We could have put like maybe an I don't know on here.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. It looks like everyone who wants to answer has answered. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
I am so
That's
encouraged.
good.
I am so encouraged by your answers. This is not what I would have seen 5 or 10 years ago. So really, I think what Lawrence and I wanted to do with this question was encourage you to become sort of data inquisitive and to be able to at least know what you have in your database about your prospects so that you can work with your database administrator, your prospect researcher, those types of people to be able to get that profile or to understand what your score or rating means.
One thing to add there, the 24% at the bottom that don't access donor records or don't really know where they are, I would put that on your to-do list And
If
we
the
want you to
organization
balance.
allows them. Yeah, some
Yeah.
organizations do have some prohibitions, but hopefully not.
We want you to balance that. Money is not raised by you spending a lot of time in the database. However, information that's vital to the fundraising process is in your database. So you have to get that information and then go ahead and make the donor engagement happen.
Right. All right, I think the slides moved magically on me here.
Yeah.
All right. This is one of my favorite quotes from a customer that I work with. And they said you can't just mail to your entire patient database. It's a health system. You'd effectively be mailing to the phone book. And I think that's what we used to do. And I became a convert of analytics and data to reach out to the right people when I first used them. I think that's a really effective quote. We encourage you to use whatever you have available or to look into something in the future. So our suggestions on implementation, really could require a long series of webinars, but we've got limited time. So we thought we'd start with some of the most useful implementation thoughts. Whoops. Here we go. Constituent lists. All right. Use your ratings or your scores, where those are internally derived, whether you're using them from a third-party vendor. Get familiar with how to make segmentation lists or ask for segmentation lists. I think segmentation is the key, whether it's for direct marketing, whether it's for the portfolio, whether it's for resonant messaging. You've got to know who it is that you're looking at. And so we would suggest using those scores as your widest net. The work's been done for you. I like to say the heavy lifting has been done for you. You've got a rating or a score or a profile that's helping you to already determine which group of people are the most likely to take this behavior of making a bequest or an annuity or a CRT. So cast the widest net first and don't have any preconceived notions at this time. Your group may be too large, maybe it's a little bit too small and you want to go down a little bit in the traditional scoring that you've been using, but we suggest that you just segment the data into a large group first. Then you can go from that and associate things that might isolate top prospects depending on your objective. So your objective might be something about an asset, a particular type of asset. Maybe you're doing a gift annuity promotion. So you're going to be focusing in a little bit more on your age requirements, on ability to make a gift at a certain level, perhaps. And this is the only place at which Lawrence and I would say, if you have a current gift rating of some sort, it could be helpful, because I can do a gift annuity year after year after year after year. So if I look like somebody whose capacity to your organization is 10,000 or 25,000, I now have an idea of what kind of, or what level of a gift annuity I might promote to them, or someone else I might promote 100,000, or I might promote 5,000, something different. So I think this allows you to be much more personalized when you use that internal or sub-segmentation criteria. Past giving could be helpful in your messaging. I want to speak to perhaps people that are current or loyal donors or part of a particular club or giving level, maybe differently than I want to speak to people who have stopped giving, but I still want to talk to them about planned gifts. The more I can say I know who you are and I know your relationship with the organization, the more we say, do that. You may have asset information available then and in your sub-segmentation, talking about gifts of real estate to certain people, or looking at location, inviting people into something or asking if they'd like to have a personal meeting or conversation. Do you have phone numbers? Who do you have phone numbers for? Who don't you? Who do you have emails for? Who don't you? I think this becomes very important to deciding what kind of marketing you're going to do and what kind of portfolios you can build with the outreach that's available to you. And that's where data enrichment services come in. You may have within your software data enrichment services built in, or ones that you can purchase. That includes address updates. That includes email finding. That includes phone finding. That includes age finding, perhaps. It even includes deceased finder type things. You see the ones that you'll see in our software here, but other software packages have them as well, or have ability to do them. And I know way back when I purchased Age from Stelter Company when I was working with them and I was a customer of theirs. I don't know if you're still offering that, but that's what I did. And I think Lawrence and I would agree that above everything else, age is probably one of the most important things to have on your plan giving profiles. And then those outreach mechanisms, their correct mail, their correct email, their correct phone, and the correct address. Let's see. I think we're probably running short on time and we wanted to get to some questions. So I'll just be really quick here. We have a brand new ink is still drying on our white paper about donor profiles over the last 20 years. And there's a link to it here. It was written after our presentation to CGP last year on this same topic. We had a 45-page paper for that one. If you'd like that, let us know. But we now have an 8-page paper that goes into more detail and is much prettier to look at if you'd be interested in that. But we wanted you to know that your analytics and donor profiles can really help with your marketing analysis as well. So you can look backwards too and say, who's responded to this? Was it people who attended the gala? Did they respond and make larger plan gifts later on? Maybe I want to focus that message or my marketing to those people in particular, or am I wasting my time on those particular constituent attributes? Is it that board members really make the largest gifts and they come in the most quickly? And so I want to focus more time in there. And so marketing analysis, I could do a whole thing on this and have written a paper on this, but really thinking about the different ways that analytics and your current donor profile or donor scores can be useful. If anybody wants to talk to me about these things, I'm excited about them and I'd be happy to have a conversation on how to use them more. Also, we think analytics can help with your national standards on gift planning success that just came out from CGP last year. And one of my favorite articles I wanted to point you to as a resource is a little bit older, but I think it still stands the test of time. It's called Planned Giving in the Big Picture, talking about your numbers to the people who count. And it is referenced in the new standards for gift planning success. It's by Stephen Myers and Bill Sammers. And I think it was an extremely useful paper and outlay of how to report your success to the CFO, to the COO, to your leaders, and to your board. And I highly recommend that you look at that. Planned Giving in the Big Picture, Stephen Meyer and Bill Sammers. I think we're probably here close to the end and ready to take some questions. I'm hoping. I wanted to show you this, Patrick Schmidt. I think he's got terrific information on their Planned Giving report. Their Donor Advised Fund report is out. They've got a QCD giving report out. He said that the best Planned Giving strategy is to reach to the broader audience and implement thoughtful, sophisticated outreach. And I think that's what our implementation suggestions are following. We're really saying cast your net wide and then think thoughtfully about more sophisticated outreach. Not all prospects are the same for you, and your profiles will help you to figure that out, that some people are better here, some people are better there. And they're hiding in the annual fund. They're hiding in our major and principal ranks as well. All right, Lawrence was going to wax and wane for a few minutes.
I'm going to wax, and I'm not going to wane. So what's on the horizon? I'm just going to hit a couple things that we hope to do. Ideally, we'd like to get plan giving models that are specific to what we call verticals within the nonprofit industry. Also, we'd love a profile on households that are most likely to create a donor advised fund, as well as households or individuals most likely to make an IRA distribution rollover gift. What does that depend on? Well, information that is collected at the organizational level. Absent that, it's almost impossible for us to do anything. We need to know what's happening at your level. So if you would heed our suggestions, having this information would help you a great deal. Even if you're not working with us, it would help you a great deal on knowing where these gifts are coming from.
Gift, the date you're notified of the organization,
Mhm.
birth date or age, I think are the most useful. And of course, your giving history. If those are the things that you can collect, they become, I think, among the most useful in the plan giving donor modeling. We've got some really great questions here that I was going to jump and look at. So besides asking them directly, how can I find out how old some of our donors are? Age overlay, purchasing a data enrichment or running data enrichment, if it's available through your software, you can get that through lots of different data vendors. So ask your database administrator if they have access to either data enrichment services or can purchase that for you.
And one caveat there, rely on the year of birth much more as being much more accurate than the actual day of birth.
Yeah, year of birth.
We wouldn't recommend you send a birthday card for the information you get.
No. How frequently should an organization working with a company like us or another run a plan giving likelihood score on their system? Lawrence, I'm going to give that one to you.
Of all the scores that we work with, plan giving scores change the least. So annually is what we typically suggest. And the reason we suggest annually, you're saying, well, if they change the least, why don't we do it every 3 or 4 years? We have people that come in to the score who weren't into the score beforehand. So if you want to keep an accurate measure of who are the plan giving prospects on your database, annually would be the best way to approach that.
Can I do a couple more? Do we have time, Jen?
Yeah, you sure do.
All right. How does engagement with the organization factor into your models? Volunteer, board service, etc. Lawrence is going to explain that. I'm just going to give you the quick answer. They can.
Yes. So for instance, a long time ago, we found out that volunteers correlated with plan giving. And if I just remember people telling me in my first development job, I'm not really capable of making much of a large gift, but I'd like to help on this committee or something like that. And then lo and behold, we would get a planned gift from them. They fit this fiscally conservative profile that Katherine was talking about earlier. So volunteers have a high correlation. Hopefully board members have a high correlation. I say hopefully because we know in talking to organizations that board members are not asked to make a plan giving commitment as frequently as they should be asked to do so. In fact, I think that should be one of the internal board campaigns that you have, to have a plan giving campaign. Now, of those two things you just mentioned, volunteers can be more likely to be a predictive variable because there's going to be more of them than there are board members. So for example, if you build a model and board member came out as predictive and you had 30 people on your board, we would tell you that we can't use that variable. It's too few of people. And unless you're willing to expand your board to 300 or 400 people, and you'd be nuts to do so, it's not a relevant variable. However, volunteers, theoretically, no limit on the number of volunteers you might ask to get involved in a variety of different projects. So that's a potential variable.
We test your variables in the way that we do it. So for one organization, we found out that people who buy the university license plate was actually predictive. So if your organization has some data that you think is useful, let your vendor know or let your internal people know, and they'll test it to see if it can be used.
And then we do, I'll just jump in right there. We do all these neat tests for multicollinearity and heteroscedasticity. In other words, to make sure that variable is not affecting the model in a way that is coming up with a score that's inaccurate.
Yeah. Here's a great question. Is it too early to use cryptocurrency assets or to have those in your model? And we're getting information from places like Experian, which I'm sure are looking at cryptocurrency holdings. We also model wealth. And as cryptocurrency becomes available from those external places, they will be used. I don't think it's too early. And I think that there's probably some of that in our holdings with these companies that put all of our information together and create household factors. You think I'm right,
this-
Lawrence?
and the general answer is, if we were working with a client who had, generally speaking, we're looking for about 300 gifts of a certain type. So if you had 300 gifts that were at least partially cryptocurrency, that would enable us to at least try to build a model for that purpose. If you have 5 gifts of cryptocurrency, that is not a sufficient number.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and break in just for a second. We are at 1 o'clock, so our time's up.
Okay.
However, Katherine and Lawrence, if you guys have an extra few minutes, we still do have about 300 people on the line, and we are recording it. So if you guys want to, we can stay on for a few more minutes and answer some more of the questions. We still have quite a few in the queue. Are you guys able to do that? I want to be respectful of your time.
I do. I can stay on for just a couple more minutes. We've
Yeah, I
got
can
Okay.
stay on.
All right.
great
We'll go
question.
ahead and do that. I did want to just let everyone know, if that has to leave, that you can reach out to Katherine or Lawrence. If you have a question, their email's on the screen. And then also we will have the recording and the handouts, and I will have a link to the white paper that was referenced in the PowerPoints also available. A lot of people asked for that, so I'll make sure that we link to that as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and let you guys answer a couple more questions.
All right. I love this one. It's been a mantra that we should focus on monthly givers, regardless of the amount. That seems at odds with the above average gift data point. What are our thoughts? Well, first, let me say we're looking at gifts over a 12-month period of time. So monthly givers likely have an above average gift amount when you're looking at combining those 12 months into a single dollar amount. So I think it goes well with this. We have not seen the monthly giver themselves as a constituent code coming into models yet, but we have seen some donor personas that are more friendly to the thought of monthly giving coming into some models. So I think maybe in its own way, that's true. It's starting to come in to show that the desire to benefit you on a monthly basis, or that fiscal conservative factors, the other way to look at it, can be, is coming in. It's remaining in there.
And a couple of things, monthly donors, sustaining giving is still a relatively new concept in the United States compared to the UK, for example, which build almost their entire annual giving programs around sustaining giving. So we expect, as we have more experience in the US, that will become a variable, because it has the loyalty factor built into it. And the second thing about this, and having worked with a couple organizations recently where we were trying to build custom sustaining models, one thing that's really important is you're able to identify who your sustainer donors are in your database. And one of those organizations that wanted a custom model could not do so. And so that's all about data quality.
Do you have any stats related to analytics specific to community foundations rather than just a single issue nonprofit? A donor model can be, if you've got the data, we can look, or other people can look at building a model. So who might make a planned gift within that community foundation could certainly be reviewed.
My thought is that community foundations might be a treasure trove of information that would allow for somewhat unusual custom models. So would love to talk to you about what the options are. Again, even if you don't want to work with our company, we are happy to share ideas.
We do have a lot of people asking if you guys have examples of strategic plans that you'd be willing to share, or one example. And I could also put that on our website along with the recording and handouts, if so.
I don't have a strategic plan that I have permission to share because it comes from a customer, those types of things, but we could synthesize.
Well, I would say, Katherine, you mentioned the national standards for gift planning success.
Yeah.
That was the first standard from support from the top standard one. I put the link in the chat. And so there is some resources there for strategic plan, as well as internal business cases and so forth. So there's some good resources there too.
We've got tons of questions. I was going to say, if we can't get to them, please reach out. We will answer them for you. We'd be happy to do that. There's one about the plan giving likelihood rating that a person on the call has from Blackbaud, and it says, does it include the characteristics of the plan giving prospect you are describing? Yes. And the answer is yes, it does include those characteristics. And if you want to talk further about it, reach out and we will help. We will.
And the paper has more information about that.
We do have the emails on the screen now. Some people are asking for your email addresses. They are up on the screen, so you can jot those down, and they'll also be in the handouts that we share with you as well.
Yep, our emails are very easy. It's our first name dot last name at blackbaud.com. So quite easy, or Google us, they will come up. When calculating the average gift, do you leave out the major gift? Often we'll use median. And we'll use average, and we'll see which one is predictive. And for our models right now, it is, I want to say it's average. I could go back and look, and if you want to email me, I can verify that.
I think that's the case for the prescriptive models. If you're doing this stuff internally on your own, look at it always possible, so that you identify which one's important for you. I'd be excited if somebody that you consider a planned gift has already made a major gift, you've got the door open to have a further conversation with that person.
We've got a real good one in here from Anne. It says, over the years, I've found that the vast majority of planned gift donors have no children, yet few databases have that question in a way that it is searchable. Is it the first priority? It is the first priority when working with our information management heads. And I just want to tell you, there is no purchasable variable that says I have no children. And so when you are looking at ubiquitous data, you have to get as close as possible by using something like the number of people in the household, or the household type or style, like male head with children or female male head with no children, those sorts of things. They're called narrow band household indicators, and you have to use those as a replacement. When you see Russell James or someone saying that these people have no children, that is self-reported data. That is people answering a question in a survey or something like that, and it is not purchasable. So you either have the self-reported information that you need to put into a table if you want to make it searchable in your CRM, or you need to use one of those substitute variables, such as household narrowband or narrowband household indicator. So 1 or 2 people in the household is what we have found in the data that we use.
And it's also something we can tell you from having attended planned giving conferences across the country, that presenters will say, you want to talk with people who don't have any children. And
that's a descriptive profile, I say. It's not a predictive profile, because you don't have to back it up. And it's not actionable. I can't say, hey, I'd like to give you a phone call only if you don't have children. So you have to use those substitute variables.
So our research has typically indicated that the people without children make a larger gift, but people with children still give. So in no way, if I were a planned giving officer right now, and I could even identify the data, as Katherine is saying, is almost impossible to do unless somebody tells you. I don't think I would change my plans as to who I was going to talk to. It's worth talking to people who have a planned giving score that's high, regardless of their situation with children. There are many, many people who have children who are not going to give their children a penny.
My neighbor just told me that. So it's true. We've got a lot of questions about giving, lifetime giving for a certain number of years. The longevity of giving incorporated into the planned giving model scores. And what I want to differentiate is that we are, in the way we do modeling, we are not choosing the factors that come into the model. The way we do modeling is that we allow any of those 1,500 pieces of information to present themselves as the model. And I don't, that's the layman's terms of putting it. It used to be probit regression modeling, and now there's machine learning and all these other things that our data science team uses and does. But we want to get as much data as we can from you, because in our modeling process, we have customers not using our services or our software. They may only be able to give us 6 years or 7 years or 8 years or 9 years. So we definitely do have that 6-year giving pattern that we look at. But if we can get 20 or 30 or 40, we use that too. But we definitely will not take 3 years. We got to have more, because we have to build some long-term giving patterns. And so we throw out a lot of numbers, but we will use more, but we do have a minimum.
Okay, with that, Katherine and Lawrence, I'm going to jump in. It is about 10 after.
We're good.
So I feel like we've made up the time that we lost in the beginning again. So sorry for the technical difficulties at the top of the webinar. Thank you for sticking with us. Again, if you did have additional questions, you can reach out to Katherine or Lawrence. Their emails are on the screen. You can also reach out to myself or Nathan. If you have questions about Stelter, our products or services, or the webinar series, our emails are on the screen as well. And then finally, once again, we are recording, so as long as it worked, I'll have it with the handouts and the white paper that you guys mentioned, and maybe link to the standards website as well that Nathan had mentioned as well. So thank you, Katherine. Thank you, Lawrence and Nathan, for being here for over the last hour with us. I think we had 500 or more people on the call with us today. So it's a great way to spend the last hour or so. And I know that the plan giving community really appreciates your time and your talent. So thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining us. Be sure to head to our website, stelter.com/webinars. Sign up for our next webinar. We have one coming up in July, I believe. We should have one in July. Wish I could tell you what that was, but head there and sign up for it. So have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.